Hi baby cakes, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for joining me for this video about the way that I interact with deity, the way that I work with my goddesses. I've spoken about this on a number of occasions on the channel already, so I'm going to leave a big list of links below to various different videos I've made on this topic already, including a video called Journey to Hell, I think it's called, where I'm talking specifically about my relationship with my matron deity. I've got a video on here about connecting with deity for the first time, finding deities to work with, that kind of thing. I've talked about working with personified deity as archetype. I've done a number of different things. The reason I'm rolling around to this topic again is because it's one of the topics that I get the most questions on. I'm hoping that some of the stuff that I talk about in this video is going to be helpful to people who've asked questions, people who might be thinking of dipping their toe into working with personified deity, but they're not sure whether or not it applies to them. They're not sure whether or not it's really going to be a good thing for them, a healthy thing for them, a sustainable thing for them, if it's really going to be possible for them. Lots of people coming at wanting to work with deity from an atheistic standpoint, or basically from a soft polytheistic standpoint anyway, not believing that deities are actually as real as you and I are, but believing that they are reflective of archetypal energies in the universe that we can work with and stuff, but also wondering how that fits in with some of the experiences that you can end up having with personified deity, which certainly do end up feeling very, very real. You know, that you do feel that these deities are interventionist beings. You can petition to them, they can talk back and forth to you. How does that work? Lots of people getting very confused about this, and I think, to be honest with you, I think a lot of people are tantalized by the idea of working with personified deity, but they're tripping over themselves a lot with what that actually means for them, how they can factor that in, how can they explain it, and how can they explain it to other people if it comes up in conversation. How would they explain it, for example, to a partner or to friends or children if they can't really fully explain it for themselves? I'm just going to talk about a few different ideas that I've been thinking of recently, different things that have come up in my client chats or in my personal life that I thought it might be useful to go over. Okay, so as I've mentioned previously on my channel in the past in various different videos, I was never drawn to working with personified deity for a really long time. I did not see it as something that it would be possible for me to do. I used to do a lot of reading and a lot of lurking in various different online forums back in the day, before we had such a thing as Facebook groups. We would have forums like UK Pagans and the Cauldron, and I would be on there under one username or another, sometimes posting but mostly lurking, and I would read a lot of different posts from people who worked with personified deity, and they would explain how the relationships worked, and, you know, offerings that they gave or conversations that they were having with their deities, messages they were receiving and so forth. And I would definitely feel like that could never apply to me. That doesn't sound like something that I could even remotely find workable in my own practice. I had no belief in the fact that that would be something I could experience. It just didn't fit into my framework at all, and at the time I was definitely not envious of people that had relationships with personified deities. It wasn't like I was looking at what they had and thinking, oh, I really wish I had that, I really wish that was something that applied to me. I was happy just doing my thing, connecting with universal energy, connecting with nature, that kind of stuff, and I definitely wasn't thinking about, you know, wanting to connect with personified deities or even archetypes at that time, you know, figures in literature or pop culture or music or fairy tales. I wasn't even thinking about that. You know, I've been a pagan and a witch for a really long time, and at first it was really just about connecting with the elements. And I definitely will say that as far as aesthetics and as far as spellcraft and as far as what I was doing with ritual, I was always highly creative. I was never one of those kids that started off by just taking things wholesale out of books or having other people tell me what to do, you know, following elders in the community or following authors. I was very much about my own thing and designing my own practice. But as far as archetypes and deities and stuff like that were concerned, I did not see myself as being able to receive messages from disembodied beings. I did not see myself as being able to have relationships with ancient deities or any of that stuff. I don't actually want to get out all of my books of mirrors and books of shadows right now to actually date check, but I would say that it was between 2010 and 2011 that I first started to feel this desire to work with personified deity. specifically goddesses. I really wanted a goddess. I'd started doing a lot more watching of YouTube videos. I'd been lurking on the pagan and witchy YouTube community for a couple of years, a year and a half, 2 years, and I had come up over and over again against these feelings of wanting to have a goddess and work with a goddess. And of course, I was much more well read by that point with regard to like archetype theory and what an archetype is and how all of these different things are representative of the stuff that lives inside of us. And I understood about the hero's journey. I had read Hero with a Thousand Faces by Joseph Campbell. I highly recommend it. And in that book, he basically goes into the structure of mythology, and he talks about how each kind of pantheon and each mythological collection of stories through every era and civilization has certain things in common. The hero's journey is a common archetype that runs through most mythological systems, and he gives different examples of different points on the journey and different characters and different challenges in the hero's journey or the hero's quest. And he gives those examples, you know, from Inuit mythology and Hindu mythology, you know, so basically he gives you this idea that the framework is present and it's just the guises and the energies that are changed to fit the cultural narrative of the time. And so because I'd read that and I was like really vibing with that, and I really vibed with the whole idea of archetypes and everything, it started to make a lot more sense to me that I could potentially have a relationship with a goddess that would work on my terms, that would feel right for me. I definitely tried to keep pushing my desires away. I definitely tried to keep ignoring them, but after a while I was just, you know what it was, I wanted a mother figure, and I wanted to feel like I was walking with someone, and I wanted to feel like I could lean into cosmic guidance and wisdom and strength. And I knew that I couldn't do that personally. I knew that I couldn't do that through just thinking about, you know, the universal energy, the faceless, you know, universal divine power. I knew that I wanted the face to it, and I wanted the characteristics to it. I wanted it to feel real. I wanted it to feel like a real relationship, and I knew that that was the only way that I was going to receive the caliber of guidance that I wanted at the time. I felt like I needed this eternal internal mother that could be personified, and I felt like that was the way that the messages were going to come thicker and faster, and I was going to get the downloads that I wanted and the lessons that I wanted. And I wasn't disappointed. I was not wrong about that. When I first started working with Hell, things just started to click really quickly. Even though I would say I didn't receive, you know, messages and really big, profound transpersonal experiences straight away, even just researching her and making the decision to just open up to her energy and learn more about her and think about what she means to me and why I was attracted to her, even just doing that really just excited me and threw me into this whole other layer of my spiritual journey and spiritual practice that I would not have gotten to otherwise. I think I saw other people's practices that they had with their deities, and I thought there's a real parental vibe there. There's a sense that you can lean into that energy, and that energy is there for you, and there's a connection, there's a bond. And I think at that point in my life, I really needed that. I really wanted that parental energy. And so for me, it made perfect sense that I was actually going to take that leap, and I was actually going to start working with personified deity. And if you watch my video about my journey with my matron and stuff like that, and my video about how to connect with deity and stuff, you will learn a lot more about my own journey. And I often say to people, you know, it wasn't fireworks, it wasn't like I had a dream and I was called by my matron or whatever. It wasn't anything like that. It was very straightforward, very sterile, just thinking about what would benefit me, what interested me, knowing very quickly that I wanted to connect with a death goddess. And then later on down the line, I thought a lot about how, you know, the Blessed Mother had never really left me and never really left my consciousness, being raised partially in an Irish Catholic family. There was a very, very heavy presence of Mary. It's very like Mariology centric in Irish Catholicism as opposed to other kinds of Catholicism usually. So yeah, I realised that was something that had never left me, and that she had actually visited me before, and that I wanted to let her in more. And then just thinking about archetypes, thinking about the close connection that I had with Joan of Arc when I was a teenager. And it really just let me, once I broke the seal, once I gave myself that permission, it led me on to lots of other really exciting things which have had a hugely positive impact on my journey. And without letting myself break that seal, I wouldn't be where I am now. It's been the thing that has helped me to move on in leaps and bounds spiritually, I think. Working with personified deity, disembodied intelligences, archetypes, you know, icons, you know, figures that represent certain things that I want to exemplify, or that I want to get in touch with. My theory on working with deity is kind of layered, and it's quite difficult to explain, but essentially, if I was strapped for time and I needed to get it into someone's mind what I think I'm doing, I would say that there is a layer, or a number of layers of wisdom within me, and knowledge within me, and power within me, that it's quite difficult to get to by just recognizing it and summoning it or calling it forth. In fact, it's nigh on impossible, because I've got all these layers of ego, I've got all of this fear, I've got all of this societal expectation, I've got all of this cultural baggage, historical baggage, etc. So for me, my matron deity is a symbol of some of those layers of sediment in my psyche, of wisdom, of strength, of divine feminine history, if you will. And it's the image of her and the relationship that I have with her that allows me to do the psychological dance that I need to do to get to that wisdom. In other words, what my goddess is telling me to do, or advising me to do, or showing me, is my higher self. It's my higher mind. It's what I know beyond these layers of ego and bullshit and cultural erosion that have happened inside of me, or historical baggage, the pain that I've gone through, the fears that I have, the insecurities that might stop me and block me from pursuing what I really want to pursue, or doing what is right for me and best for me. So to me, I feel like when I listen to my matron, when I connect with her, and when I let her fill me with her wisdom, that is my wisdom. That is actually me. But it's those parts of me that it's more difficult to get to. And if I do that psychological dance, if you will, if I do that weird cosmic fandango, I can get where I need to be. I actually believe that that is why humankind have so many stories and fairy tales and fables and bits and pieces of folklore and mythological systems and stuff like that. I believe that a lot of it is a psychological dance, so that we can help ourselves listen to our higher knowing and connect with our authenticity, honor our strength, recognize our power in a situation. And I think that that's just exactly what I chose to do when I decided I wanted to walk beside a cosmic mother. I wanted to be able to check in with this energy that was there for me, that could show me myself when there were a lot of layers obscuring my authenticity from me. And that's how I feel about it. Now, the thing that often confuses people then is the fact that I don't believe that my goddess isn't real. And that really gets to people when I explain that, oh, I think it's a symbol of me, and it's the parts of me that I can't get to, and you know, a personifying and othering makes it easier to connect with that inner wisdom. Then people are like, okay, so you don't believe your goddess is real. You know, it's all make believe. It's all you know, self-transformative psychodrama, but there's nothing real to it. I do believe she's real, but not in the way that some people believe that their gods and goddesses are real. It feels extremely real to me when I'm receiving the information, when I'm connected like that, in that way, with that incredible sacred image and everything that I know about it, and everything that I've learned about her. That's real as fuck. And the results of that are real as fuck. And it's not just because she is something that comes through from ancient thought, you know, it's not just because she's part of the Norse pantheon that makes me feel like it's real as fuck. I definitely think you can just invent your own goddess. I definitely think that a goddess can be birthed of your imagination, just as I think that the version of hell that I have in my heart and my mind is slightly birthed of me. No one can ever know her in the exact same way that I know her, because I can only experience her through the lens of my consciousness and who I am as a human being. So even though I might talk to other sons and daughters of hell, and we might have some overlap and some empathy with regard to the way that we talk about her, the energies that we've experienced from her, I'm always going to have my version of her that essentially has been made up from me and who I am. And that's why you kind of have to accept, when you talk to someone about a deity that you both revere and work with, that yes, there might be some overlap, but certainly at the same time, there may be some things that don't ring true for you that ring true for the other person, and vice versa. It's because we're all individuals, and that lens is going to skew the picture to one extent or another. I do think a lot of it has to do with the way that you think about the imagination as well, and the way that you think about the dream world and the fantasy realm. All of that stuff is really important to me. All of that stuff has always held a massive amount of potency and power and sway for me. I do not just wake up and, you know, shake my dreams out of my head and forget about them. They're important to me. They hold messages for me. They are symbolic. Other people's dreams are important to me too. My fantasy realm, the visions that I've had of kingdoms and territories that I've maintained over time in my psyche, that I visited as a child, that I visit now as an adult, those places are real. They're not physical. You can't visit them, but they're fucking real. And whether or not you can visit them is, the jury's out on that, to be honest with you, because, you know, there's definitely ways and means of visiting somebody else's territory that they've created. I do not denigrate the realm of the imagination. I think it's really sad that we teach children to denigrate the imagination, and this is something that I've said on the channel before. It's not unique. It's not something that only I think. Tons of people have said this and spoken about it far more articulately and eloquently than me. But, you know, because of those things, I would never choose the words not real or imaginary to refer to my goddess or my relationship with my goddess. She's fucking real, you know, but not in the very material way that we mean usually when we say that something is real. It's not earthly and it's not part of consensus reality, but that doesn't make it any less real. And the results of it are absolutely real. You know, so I kind of take issue with the idea that the connection is imaginary or not real when the results of it can be so evidenced in my life. The results of it can be evidenced in the changes that I've made, the ways in which I've grown, the ways that I've developed my reality to be so much more in keeping with who I am, the strength that I've built, the relationships I've built, the decisions I've made. A lot of that has been a direct result of the positive connection I've had with my matron deity and other disembodied beings. So, you know, there's something real about that in terms of what it's actually caused. If you think about the meaning of a tarot card, for example, and you think about everybody working with tarot having their own specific relationship with that tarot card, let's say the death card, for instance, you think about how we have these key themes and energies that we definitely directly associate with death as a card, and we talk about that, we have discussions about that, but we also bring in our own nuanced perspectives on what the card means. We bring our own experiences into the equation. We start to see the card differently as we have conversations with each other about the card. Now, that to me is almost like creating an egregore. It's like a bunch of people getting together and putting their intention, their vision, their perception, their experience towards something. It's like a ball of energy that keeps developing and moving and thriving and changing and evolving over time, because it's being fed by the attention and the meaning that's being directed towards it by all of these different people, and therefore it becomes real. It creates real change in people's lives. When the death card comes up in people's lives, in people's readings, their lives are changed. You know, the death card has a potency, it has a power. It runs through popular culture, it runs through occult circles, it runs through the dreamscape, you know. We make creative depictions of it over and over and over again. It's real, it's totally real, but it is defined by the way that we all pay attention to it, focus on it, and feed our thoughts and experiences into it. To me, the Norse goddess of the underworld, Hel, or Hela, however you want to say it, she's the same. You know, the people that follow her, that work with her, that have dreams about her, that have studied anything they can get their hands on about her, that have leapt beyond what they've studied and really allowed themselves to have their own experiences, they are all feeding into a direction in the ether, if you will, in the abstract, and in that direction is Hel. It's the energy that's been built up around her, the history that's been built up around her, the vibes, man, and that makes her real. She is a real thing. She's as real to me as she is to someone else. She's a real being, but I can only experience her in my nuanced way, just as someone will only experience her in theirs. I do not believe that she is literally as physically as I am now in a kingdom in the basement of the universe, you know, like I'm just about to pick up a frosty mobile phone and see what I want and have a chat with me. But there are other profound ways to tap into that energy, which is still very much alive and kicking, which is still being fed, which is still being nurtured, which is still growing. And to me, that's what makes it real, in just the same way as the imagination, something you would see or experience in your imagination, may not have any basis in physical reality. But why denigrate it because of that? It's still just as real as anything in physical reality. And I know that I'm completely fucking butchering this explanation right now, but I'm sure some people that are watching this can kind of get the gist of what I mean. So to me, I would never say that I do not believe my goddess is real. I think that when we talk about a goddess being real, as in hard polytheist real, we are being so narrow and so rigid in our perception of what is possible when connecting with disembodied energies, beings, you know, thought forms, whatever. There's so many other different ways that you can see it, and the results of doing it and playing with it and having these experiences are so real that you will never again be able to say that your goddess is make-believe or imaginary or the connection isn't real, because once you've watched it do its work to improve your life so completely, it's real from that point on, and there is nothing anyone can say to change your mind, honestly. There are so many different ways that people choose to work with deities. Some people do dedicate to their deities and some people don't. Some people work with one deity exclusively, or one male, one female deity exclusively. Other people work with a whole host of different deities, as well as archetypes, as well as deceased rock stars or painters or whatever. Any number of different things could be going on. It really depends what your practice looks like. Like I said earlier in this video, the realization for me that I could work with personified beings, whether they were actually deified or not, you know, whether they're historical beings or actual imaginary beings from folklore, fairy tale, whatever, the realization that I could do that was probably the biggest single game changer in my entire spiritual journey for me, in terms of what I'm able to achieve as a result of that, in terms of the amount more empowerment that I feel I have. If you are standing on the sidelines thinking that you can't work with personified deity, or you can't work with, you know, personified beings in any way, figures, whatever, but you really want to, I would definitely recommend that you try to get over whatever resistance you're having to it. Just know that you don't have to think about it the same way other people think about their connections with disembodied beings, with deities, with spirit guides, with ancestors, with rock stars, with icons, with, you know, figures in history, figures in fiction. If you want to work with any kind of figure, whether it's your favourite fictional character, a dead queen from many moons ago, or a goddess from the Greek pantheon, you get to decide what that means for you. You get to cement the framework and you sign off on whatever it is you're doing. A lot of people worry about the degree to which they have a responsibility to explain what they are doing. And one thing that's always been very clear to me, and has become increasingly clear to me through my journey, is that the burden of responsibility is not on me to explain what I'm doing, why it works, why it's beneficial for me, why I'm going to carry on doing it, or what I think the nuts and bolts of it are. It's my thing. There is no burden of proof laid upon me. I don't have that responsibility. I'm not starting a cult. I'm not trying to convince other people to do things my way. You know, I'm not trying to tap something into the stone and make it into law and make it into statue and convince everybody to swallow my Kool-Aid. It's just something that I do for me, that I know works very well for me and has helped me to level up across every different aspect of life. So for me, yes, I do kind of bat the ball back and forth as to what I think is going on, and certainly I have had experiences in what I call the in-between place, where I've had such incredibly surreal experiences that it is truly, truly felt like this goddess is other to me. Which in a way I feel that she is, but not in the sense that other people do. I hope that makes sense from what I've explained earlier in this video. I've definitely had these weird feelings that something is going on, or there are layers of things going on that I can't explain, that are beyond my ability to explain. They are different to what I thought I was going to experience coming into it. So I might have rationalized it and intellectualized it at the beginning, and I can still do that for you now in this video. But absolutely there are experiences I have where I'm just like, whoa, okay. Like, for example, for me, there's quite a big difference between the kinds of messages that I request from my matron deity, for example, through channeling or through drawing cards or throwing the runes, or just praying at my altar and being a receptacle for her wisdom to come through. And then dreams that I have where she shows up, or messages that come very much out of the blue, where I was not really thinking about seeking an answer, but she came to me with just the right thing at the right time. That really puts me in the in-between place where I'm like, wow, that was really something that I wasn't looking for, I wasn't searching for, but it came in her guise, it came with her stamp on it. It wasn't just a piece of intuition or a piece of synchronicity. It was like hell approved synchronicity. She came in and she gave me that synchronicity. It very much has her mark upon it. It is her voice, it is her hand upon this machine of synchronistic happening. And that does put me in the in-between place for sure, where I'm like, wow, that's really something that feels so outside of what I could explain. I can't explain it. Does it bother me that I can't explain it? No, I revel in the majesty and the magic of it. I do not think that it is my responsibility to explain to people, to be able to convince people at all. And to me, that's what a lot of people do need to let go of when they're coming into their own with spirituality, when they're on the sidelines with things and they're thinking, I can't have that, I can't do that, I can't embrace that, because how would I explain it? How would I justify it? I would say if you're there on your journey right now, ask yourself, why do you need to justify it? Justify it to who? Justify it for what reason? Why do you need to feel like the burden of proof is upon you to have all of your ducks in a row and everything worked out and all the fine detail in place before you can start to do something that is going to be meaningful for you, that is going to be empowering for you, that is going to be exciting for you? And I think that once you kind of realise that you don't need to justify, that is a really important turning point, particularly for people who want to work with personified deity or otherwise work with disembodied beings of any variety and are feeling like they can't do that, like they're not really allowed to do that. I'm definitely a realist. I understand that the vast majority of people that watch my videos or who are on a sincere spiritual journey are not like the hermit. They're not living up in a cave somewhere on their own, not having to answer to anybody, not really getting into conversations with people who are interested in what they're doing. You know, people are connected. We have connections with people. We have partners, we have siblings, we have friends, we have people we interact with who are going to want to understand what's going on with our spiritual journey if they see that it is important to us. And I think that's a really wonderful thing. It's lovely to have that as well. It's really nice to have experiences in your life where somebody says, well, you know, explain to me, what do you do here? What is all this? What is all this tomfoolery? What is all this fucking shenanigans that are going on your altar? Or what is this painting of this ancient deity? You know, what do you do on the points of the wheel of the year? You know, why couldn't you come out last weekend or whatever? It's nice when somebody wants to know. It's nice when someone's getting closer to you and they want to understand what it is that means so much to you or takes up so much of your time and focus. But you've got to remember that there's always going to be something lost in translation to one degree or another. And you've got to be okay with that. And to an extent, they've got to be okay with that as well. So it's worthwhile saying, as you go into the conversation, that you do not feel that it's actually possible to explain the full terrain of what you do in words. You are allowed to say that you do feel like it pervades language, and you can do what you can do to explain the nuts and bolts of it, but there are some things that there's just no point ham-fistedly attempting to explain, because you're never going to get there. It's about personal experience. And that goes for everything. That's not just about explaining your relationships with deities. It's also about just explaining, you know, ritual, spellcraft, anything that you do, any kind of prayer or contemplation or practice that you do. Really, there is going to be something lost in translation, and I think both parties have to be okay with that. And I remember being okay with that from a really young age, because I used to be fascinated by the devout Irish Catholics in my family, my elders, when I was growing up. And I remember specifically my great auntie Mary. I would ask her so many questions about her Catholic faith. I was fascinated by it, and I would ask her about her relationship with God and her relationship with Mary. And it used to frustrate me a little bit when I was really young, because she used to say, she would answer to an extent, but then she would always just say, Kelly, the relationship with divinity is personal, and there's just no way that I can explain what it's like, why, or any of those things. Everybody has to experience it in their own heart, and it comes from the heart of the individual practitioner. And that's the end of that, you know, case closed. And it used to frustrate me, but I'm glad that I had those conversations with her, because I then came to a point where when it came time for me to trip over myself with justifications and reasons why, and I can't work with a goddess, it doesn't make sense, and it would be silly, and I would feel silly, and you know, why do I keep wanting this? I think it was partly her voice that led me to this point where I was like, who cares what other people think, and let me try and get out of my own way. There's a reason that this keeps calling to me, so let it call to me and let me let it in, and let me see if there's anything there. Is there anything available to me there that would be useful? And I can 100% testify to the fact that yes, there was plenty in there that was fucking useful, and I'm so glad that I opened that door and that I didn't reject it out of hand because I felt I couldn't explain it. You know, I still can't really explain it well enough, and it's okay. And I suppose a big part of the reason I made this video today is because I want you to know also that it is okay. There's always going to be something lost in translation, and you're probably never going to settle on the first explanation anyway, because as you move into working with personified deity, you will find that you have experiences that leave you feeling completely enamored and in awe and confused and, you know, curious, and it invites lots of different doors to open. There are lots of different avenues that you didn't expect, that you can't explain, and you go on from there. So even if you manage to narrow it down to this very specific explanation, and that feels okay for you in the beginning, once you start to do the work and you start to have those experiences, and they may come slowly for you, they definitely came slowly for me, slow and steady for me, you realise that you are not in Kansas anymore, Toto. Okay, you are in motherfucking Munchkin land, and you're about to walk on the yellow brick road, and it's okay. That's got to be okay. You've got to give yourself permission to get out of your own way even more and just go where the experience takes you. It's bold, it's brave work, especially if you come from a background that involved religious dogma, and I'm going to talk about that a lot more this year on the channel. It's something that I have really worked with a lot of my clients on, is coming out from under the umbrella of religious dogma or secular dogma, atheistic dogma, whatever the case may be, and finding your feet inside the thing that is really calling to you spiritually. If you've listened to this video and you're thinking to yourself, yeah, I do want to get started, there is something that I want to invite in, I do want to work with such and such a being of one kind or another, I would recommend just literally do some kind of a ritual or a gesture or a practice that shows you to be in readiness to receive, in readiness to connect. That's all you need to do in the beginning. If you don't know what kind of being you would like to work with, but you find yourself a little bit like I did a few years ago, feeling like you want some company and you want to feel like there is some kind of cosmic family member on side for you, there is some kind of connection that you're working on in a non-physical sense, in a mystical sense, then congratulations, that's an amazing place to be. That's super, super exciting for you. And I would recommend just doing exactly what I did and starting by thinking about what you might need, what might be a challenge for you, what might give you lessons that you need in that moment. I just sensed very strongly that I wanted to work with a death goddess, that if there was going to be something that would come in and I would get to choose it, or at least hold my hand out and request, you know, work with me, if you've got anything for me, give it to me, I knew it would be a death goddess. So I started researching death goddesses, and you learn a lot more about my journey in my Journey with Hell video if you want to, and it started from there. I saw some images of her, I looked at images that different artists had done of her, I found everything I could find about her. And then I started to write a little bit about why I thought it was her that I wanted to work with and that kind of thing. And then I wrote some letters and I just read them aloud to her in sacred space. And I asked her to come to me in dreams. I asked her if she had anything for me, if she could imagine even for a moment giving me a drop of her dark wisdom, then to do so, to please do so. And I was in readiness and I was open. And so whether you know what being you want to work with or not, if you do, show yourself to be in openness and readiness and just keep doing that. And if you don't, find the being, find the fictional character, the archetype, the deity, the ancestor, and do something, perform a gesture, let that being know, let that energy know that you are in readiness to receive and that you are going to be open to the experiences rather than trying to mold them into what you want them to be. I'm also going to leave a list down below of some of the services that I provide, particularly for people who are looking at connecting more closely with a goddess they're already working with, or finding goddesses to work with, connecting with divine feminine energy, etc. I have been doing for a very long time now a goddess guidance reading and a mini goddess guidance guidance reading. I'll leave them down below for you to check out if you feel like you could do with some goddess energy, some goddess messages, divine feminine guidance, etc. I also offer a tea with the goddess package, which is really intensive, and it involves sacred art making that helps you to connect closely with the divine feminine, and I draw on messages from the cards, etc. It's really an interesting purchase option that I've never seen anyone else offer anything similar, and it's something that comes from things that I do in my own practice to connect with divine feminine energy, and I've started to offer that for clients recently, and I'm very much enjoying them. So if you do want to check out the tea with the goddess purchase option, check that out as well. And I also offer a solitary witch reading and a spiritual path reading, so if you want to check in with maybe some of the themes and the topics I've discussed in this video, but you also just want to look at your spiritual path in general, how to level up spiritually, what kinds of things might need to come through for you on your spiritual path to just make it so much better and so much busier, you can check out those purchase options as well. And I'll also leave down below for you my creative magic brainstorming session. If you want to talk to me about magic, ritual, leveling up in that regard, you might want to book some time with me via Skype to chat about that as well, and we can get you moving on the right path, going in a positive direction, being the witch or magician that you really truly want to be. So I really hope some of these thoughts have been interesting and useful. Please let me know down below what your experiences have been working with personified deity. Have you been on that road a long time, and how have your experiences changed over time? Have you learned anything important that you would like to impart to anyone who is new on the journey, who might be scrolling through the comments? And if there's anything that you would like to know that you haven't been able to gather from the previous videos that I've done, and you would like me to make a video on that aspect of working with disembodied beings, please let me know and I will do my best to accommodate you. Much love, and as always, baby cakes, blessed be.